Hey everybody, hope you're all doing well. My name is Steven and this is the Storytime channel. Today we have entitled Parent Stories and our first story of the day is by KG Real 26. Get a COVID test or don't see your grandkids. So my wife and I, female 33, male 34, like everyone else are dealing with the intense stress of this pandemic. We had our son in March on the eve of the lockdown and we're blessed to be able to have a great birth and get out hours before patient zero in our area entered our hospital and kicked off the lockdowns. I work retail and was able to take a month of paid paternity. We live in New York State, but when I returned to work, we decided to live apart for 2 months. We are blessed to have a good support network in our area with my mother-in-law/father-in-law, early to mid-60s, taking care of our daughter, 3, and now our son. My wife stayed with the kids at their house and moved back after things became more clear with the masks and social distancing and everything settling down more in our area. She works in an office and had 4 months maternity leave with full-time work from home after. My parents, late 60s, still live where I grew up just north of New York City, and I now live in western New York about 350 miles away. There is a reason why I actively put distance between myself and my parents. They are very loving and have helped me through numerous rough patches in my college years, but have always been a bit self-serving when it comes to their love and affection. My wife and my parents have never really gotten along well. They have been the sole point of contention between my wife and I throughout our relationship. I still care for them, but they just won't change. They are no fun to be around and generally bring a negative attitude even about the most positive things. My mom wants what she wants and my dad just tails along. After 40 plus years married, he just rolls with it. I could write pages and pages about our relationship, but we don't have time for that. Most important need to know fact, my mom has subtly and not subtly always been jealous of the amount of time my in-laws get with the grandkids versus the amount they get. That should tell you all you need to know about the mindset here. They visited over the summer when my son was about 4 months old. It was a fine visit, but afterwards my wife got very sick with pneumonia and was almost hospitalized. She took several negative COVID tests, but it lasted almost a month. She is still dealing with some after effects and her doctor is obviously concerned, especially since she's still breastfeeding. Her doctor is really concerned about the negative impacts of my wife getting sick again and still thinks it could have been COVID. Our kids also had slight respiratory effects as well, but with negative tests. I too had a negative test, no symptoms, although I typically don't get sick as much. Obviously, my parents want to come visit again. I know they generally do a good job wearing their masks and they really don't go out much. My wife and I do a good job of reducing exposure, wearing masks all the time in public, but we do have a small social circle of kids that our daughter plays with and we have gone out to breakfast twice in the last 6 weeks. Also twice in the last 8 months. We are not accusing my parents of getting anyone sick, but with the global pandemic picking back up again, we asked them to take a COVID test and send it to us or wear masks the whole time. We also offer to take tests and send out results as well. Of course, I don't want to ask anyone to do these things, but here we are in the middle of a freaking global pandemic. Now, my brother had reached out a few weeks ago and I told him the same thing, to which he opted to maybe wait till next year then, which is his choice. My mom and I talked about this after I told my brother because of course we did. Cue to today where we had our weekly video chat where we talked about planning a weekend in December for them to visit. I had specifically talked with my mom about my wife's health concerns and waiting for test results, etc., earlier this week. We had talked about getting tested at various points over the last few weeks. Today, flat out refuses to get a test. My wife and I, with all the kids and the dog around us, kind of dumbfounded, but also expecting some resistance somewhere in our plan, fire back on the offensive/defensive? We were willing to forgo mask wearing with the tests. We're concerned for everyone's health, as they're not exactly the pinnacles of human health either, but she just flat out refuses. After some back and forth, voices were raised and lines were drawn in the sand. I couldn't take it anymore and just straight up yelled into the video chat, "Get a COVID test or don't see your grandkids." My mom hung up on me. Things cooled down and she called 20 minutes later to finish up, but we still have to sort things out and she is still not wanting to take a test. So let me ask you guys, who here is at fault? Is it the parents for flat out refusing to take a test and not even wanting to wear masks? Or is OP maybe a little too overprotective in your books? Let me know in the comments down below. Our next story is by Cheerio Dude number 2, entitled Mother Thinks My Colorblindness is Contagious, Tries to Get Me Banned from School Fair. Little disclaimer, this happened 6 years ago, so COVID lockdown had nothing to do with this. Bit of backstory. I am mildly colorblind, protanopia I think, and I have had this my whole life. I mostly struggle with telling the difference between pink and yellow, but there are more colors out there that I can't see. This all started when the primary school my younger brother, 11 at the time and not colorblind, was putting on a party/fair. I don't remember what for, but I think it had something to do with fair trade. Now my mother made me cut out some paper chains along with other people in the gym to prepare for the fair. More and more people left until it got to the point where it was just me and another kid and an old gentleman at the back. Remember this part. And this kid was professional at making paper chains. I struggled to keep up. I was sitting closer to the piles of paper than he was. When the kid ran out of paper, he kindly asked me to pass some of the yellow paper. I pulled some pink paper out of the pile, thinking it was yellow, and he looked at me confused, so I responded with, "Wait, is this pink or yellow?" And he responded pink and led me to the yellow paper. I apologized and told him I was colorblind, and he started to ask questions. They were questions of curiosity such as, "Do you see red?" or "What color is that?" Then enters entitled mother. The entitled mother in this case was the kid's mother and had entered the gym looking for the kid's father and overheard us talking about my colorblindness. The entitled mother first said, "Blank sweetie, please keep your distance. I don't want you to become colorblind as well." Me being utterly confused replied with, "Excuse me, you can't catch colorblindness from another person." The entitled mother then proceeded to give me BS looks and then walked out of the gym with her son in tow. I'd say about 5 minutes later, she returns with the head of the department and said, "Yep, he's the one." The head then approached me and said, "Are you the one causing disturbance down here?" No, what do you mean? This woman thinks my colorblindness is contagious and that I'm going to give it to her son. The head, of course, did not believe me, being a 14-year-old at the time who slacked off a lot. My mother overheard the conversation and walked in too and started to defend me until the entitled mother yelled, "Colorblindness is contagious and you're going to give it to everyone here if you don't leave." Me and my mom looked at her, utterly shocked, and the head was unaware on whose side she was on until she said, "All right, Miss Entitled Mother, and you, OP, I'm going to ask you both to leave as you're both making a disturbance here." But then, the old gentleman at the back of the gym stood up and said, "There is no disturbance, miss. Mrs. Entitled Mother is the only one harassing anybody here," before sitting back down again. Having heard his side, the head banned the entitled mother from the school fair. Don't worry about the kid though, he got to go with his dad. I saw the entitled mother drive out of the school, and I haven't seen her since. Also, as it turns out, the old gentleman was the school's former headmaster. I don't know what kind of misinformation train this entitled mother ended up on, but thinking colorblindness is a contagious thing? They must have had absolutely no exposure to any kind of colorblindness stuff ever. This next story is by AislingFliuch, entitled "Aunt may need a specific invite to tell her not to come to my wedding." My fiance, 30-year-old male, and I, 28-year-old female, recently made the call to massively reduce the size of our wedding guest list in light of COVID. We aren't getting married until next summer, but we can't be sure how things will be by then, and we didn't see the sense in piling money into a big wedding that might not happen. We also realized that we weren't fussed on the big wedding in the first place, so it actually has given us the opportunity to have the wedding that we really want. We've decided to have a small party at home with just immediate family and the bridesmaid/groomsmen, approximately 15 guests. We both have large extended family, but everyone has been very understanding and supportive of the decision. Or so I thought. My cousin/bridesmaid recently revealed that her mother has been discussing my wedding in full confidence that I am going to feel guilty and end up inviting her after all. She's a woman who has often crossed boundaries in the past. Her husband, my dad's brother, died when I was quite young, and the family all gathered around her for support. I grew up alongside her children, which she has taken as a license to act as a mother figure to me. This was fine when we were children, but has been intrusive as an adult. She inserts herself where my own parents would respect my independence. She regularly criticizes my choices and dismisses any opinion I have that opposes hers. She recently tried to get in to see my sister's newborn baby, even though her own husband wasn't allowed to stay more than a few minutes after the birth because of COVID rules, and me and my parents won't see her at all until restrictions lift. When we were planning the big wedding, she inserted herself when it came to invites and flowers. She compared my wedding every step of the way to my sister's big wedding 3 years ago and made insinuations about how my sister's relationship with her childhood sweetheart was superior to mine with my fiancé because we weren't together as long. Anytime we called her out on crossing the line, she would play the dead husband card. To be honest, part of my happiness with a small wedding was knowing she would have nothing to do with it. My fear now is that she's just going to show up anyway. She'll play it off as just dropping over to say congrats and pile on the guilt by mentioning how much my uncle would want to be there, which melts my dad every time. But in doing so, she'll be going against my expressed wishes and breaking all sorts of COVID rules. It would never occur to her that when I say I don't want to invite the whole family, that includes her. It's a very tough pill to swallow, but at some point you just gotta be blunt and deal with it, because how many years, how many scenarios, how many situations do you want to go on dealing with this kind of always looming over everything? At some point you might want to just rip the band-aid, and yeah, it might cause a bunch of internal turmoil with the family or some issues or just drama, but it's such a burden on you to have to deal with it to begin with that it's probably worth it. Our next story is by RubyLovesDonuts, entitled Mother Pops Football/Soccer Ball When It Goes Over Her Side of the Fence. Her kid becomes a bullying target at school. This is an old story, but I guess it kind of fits here. When I was 10, I would play football, soccer for you Americans, with my cousins who visited my home during the holidays. We will call them Bruce and Robert for the sake of keeping identities safe. While playing football, me and Bruce tried the overhead tricks a few times, and one of these times led to the ball flying over the goal and into my neighbor's back garden. The woman was an older woman who looked in her late 30s and very chubby. Long brown curly hair, and a dress that made her fatness very apparent. Her son actually tried to take the ball when it went over, and me and my cousins were screaming angrily about him being a thief for trying to keep our ball that belonged to us. My two aunts, who we'll call Sally, Robert's mom, and Allie/Allison, Bruce's mom, came out after hearing the shouts and demanded the ball be given back to us. The entitled mother smirked at us before digging her nails into the ball and bursting it. The loud bang had caused us to get angrier, and me and my cousins actually jumped over the fence together to snatch back the popped ball. The entitled mother slapped me and told me, "If you didn't want it popped, you wouldn't have kicked it over the fence. This is your fault." I cried when the son started laughing at us, and I shoved him into his freezing cold pool before jumping back over. Ever since that day, I have been very apprehensive of interacting with neighbors. I got that ball for my 10th birthday. After the crap with the Karen next door, the kid became the most hated person in school, and this little bully got a taste of what it feels like to be bullied. My cousin spread the story around the school. A week or so after the bullying, the kid was pulled out of school and the mother moved home. The nice old lady who moved in was actually someone I considered a friend while I knew her. I helped her with cleaning her home, and she gave me some money, which I saved for a new ball. The rest of the leftover cash I put together to buy a scooter, manual one, not an engine scooter. Karen may have gotten away with destroying my football, but karma comes around. It is a little bit of a satisfying revenge kind of moment, but it also kind of just ends up feeling like there's really no winners in this story. OP got a very negative experience in a popped ball, and the other kid, although they were absolute jerks, ended up getting bullied enough to be pulled out of school and had to move. So really, I end up feeling like nobody really had a good outcome. This next story is by AlexJowski, when I became the entitled parent fighting another entitled parent. My daughter was up super early one morning and wanted to get a snack before I had to drive her to school, so I decided we'll walk to the little convenience store a few blocks away, pick up some donuts, and then I take her to school. Now, this convenience store is not on a corner. It's in the middle of a block, and most of the north side of that block and the next block over is under construction, so there are signs and detours. Because of this, the city built a special crosswalk. It's an actual painted crosswalk, and they have set signs about yield to pedestrian. So my daughter and I buy our donuts, we start heading home, we get to the new crosswalk, look both ways and go. Then a woman squeals out of the store parking lot and nearly hits us. Of course, I'm screaming at the woman, pointing at signs, calling out her recklessness. Her excuse: "My kid is going to be late to school." Now, this was at about 6:45 a.m. I ask what school. Same school as my daughter, which I know because of COVID doesn't even allow parents to drop their kids off until 7:15. The school is very close, can be seen from the store. So of course we fight when I call her out on that, to point out, you're going to be parked for half an hour. It was a mess, and we're in the middle of the street yelling at each other for a good 10 minutes. In the end, both our kids got to school on time. I mean, that kind of tells you all you need to know about the entitled mother's BS. Her saying, "My kid's gonna be late to school, that's why I almost ran you over." And then they were able to proceed to have a 10-minute argument in the middle of the street and still get there plenty on time. And our final story of the day is by another guilty witness, entitled "Mother Tries to Get Me Arrested for Taking My ADHD Medicine." For context, I have ADHD. I take legally prescribed medicine for it, and if I forget to take it in the morning, I have a couple of doses in a pill bottle from an old fill in my car. It's important to take it daily as it works better the more days I take it in a row, similar to some antidepressants. Each fill costs about $60 to $70, and I keep about 1/4 of a fill in my emergency stash. So it's the weekend and I have plans to meet some friends at a local coffee shop. We have masks, outside seating, and sanitizer at the ready. This so happens to be a day where I forgot to take my medicine. We order our drinks and snacks, and after I put our order down at the table, I tell my friends I need to go take my meds. I go to my car and grab the bottle to bring back as I left my drink with my buddies. I get back, and as I pop the pill into my mouth and take a sip, a wild Karen appears. No haircut, but a 5 or 6-year-old kid in tow. She slaps the open pill bottle off of the table and starts screaming about how I shouldn't do drugs, yada yada. She demands I apologize to her son for being such a bad influence and doing such sinful things in public. I try to explain that they are not narcotics, but medicine for my ADHD. Then she phones the police. The police arrive and they get our stories. After getting witnesses, the police ask me for proof that these were my meds, which I provide. At this point, Karen is starting to sweat. She realizes that she freaked up and is now trying to backtrack out of the situation. The police ask me if I would like to press charges as the meds in the bottle are now ruined. I say no, as I'm not about to spend court costs over $15. Karen is dealt with, and we leave one story to tell richer. It really is kind of letting her off the hook, not pressing charges, or at least kind of trying to demand $15 for a replacement. I know you don't actually have any kind of grounds to demand $15 even though they destroyed it like that, unless of course you actually go through a proper process, but I would imagine the threat of pressing charges would be enough for them to shell out $15 for you, because you don't want them to feel like they just got away with it. It kind of, in the end, I think would encourage more stupid behavior like that. Hopefully they did learn a lesson here though. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. So if you enjoyed the stories today, let me know which one was your personal favorite and why in the comments down below. And if you haven't yet, please like this video and subscribe and turn notifications on, because anything you do helps this channel grow so much more. So no matter what you do, whether it was just watching the video, liking, subscribing, thank you all so very much for supporting me right here on the Storytime channel. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you all next time right here.